Hi, everyone. Welcome to EdTechTeam Live, Dive into Inquiry with Trevor Mackenzie. We are going to get started in just about 2 minutes. We're going to wait for everyone to come into the room, but get situated in the YouTube Live room. And you can see the chat in the right-hand corner, and go ahead and say hi in the chat. But we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks, everyone. Welcome again, everyone, to EdTechTeam Live, Dive into Inquiry. Great to see so many people already coming in from all over the world. We'll get started in just about 1 minute, but do get yourself situated in the live chat. Say hi, tell us where you're from, and we'll get started in just 1 minute. Thanks, everyone. All right, everyone, let's get rolling. So great to see you all here tonight, today, this morning, wherever you are. We're so pleased today here at EdTechTeam to join Trevor Mackenzie for Dive into Inquiry Live. So excited. We're going to have a few questions for you today here that you can answer in the back channel here at YouTube. Please feel free to share any of your aha moments, things that stick out to you, at hashtag EdTechTeam as well, to publicly share it with the larger community. But we will be moderating and hanging out with you right in this very YouTube chat. And we're super stoked because we're going to give a chance to see some of you if you should be so inclined. At the very end, we'll give you a Hangout link to come on camera with Trevor and I and ask questions, or just say hi and share your experience with inquiry as well. So we'll run 2 parts today, one here on YouTube on the chat, and then we'll give an optional opportunity for you to come online with us here in the Hangout. So, and we are also giving away a copy of Dive into Inquiry, so a good chance to hang out and stick with us till the end, which we'll be giving out to anyone who's stuck around that long. But I promise you, Trevor has some really good stuff, so you'll have a good time with us for sure. But without further ado, I'll introduce you to Mr. Mackenzie, who is an English teacher and a learning coach at Oak Bay High School in Greater Victoria School District up in Canada. So thanks for joining us today, Trevor. Really excited to have you. My name's Wendy Gorton, and I'll be moderating with Trevor today. Hey, Trevor, how's it going?
Hey, Wendy, good. How are you? Good to see you here. Thanks for having me. And hi, everyone on the chat line. Good to see everybody trickling in.
Awesome, cool. Thanks, Trevor, for joining us and taking the time in the classroom, it looks like. So we're keeping Mr. Mackenzie after school today, but I think that's Looks like you still have some sunlight, so that's good.
Yeah, not for long, just a little bit longer. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Well, community watching, we'll go ahead and give you a quick prompt, and then Trevor will go into a little bit of the background of Dive into Inquiry, where the inspiration came to make this, and a little bit about the book itself. But if you're wondering about the book, you can get it at Amazon, and you can also make sure you add Trev_Mackenzie to your network right now. But do check out the actual book, or if you have it, feel free to dig into it while we're talking today as well. But don't worry, you don't have to have it to have fun, because we'll give one away at the very end. But now I ask the community, and then Trevor will jump in. Can you introduce yourself? So go ahead and tell us. A lot of you already have. We have folks from Texas. We got from Tokyo. So all over we have folks joining us today. But go ahead and tell us what you do. So are you a classroom teacher? Are you a coach like Trevor is? And where you're from? And then also, are you already incorporating inquiry into your classroom? So just a quick background check with our whole community who's joining us. While that's going on in the background, Trevor, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and inquiry. Take it away.
Thanks, Wendy. Great introduction. And again, so great to see friends trickling in, some of my PLN and some new friends that I'm going to add to my network. So thanks for being here, everybody. Chat is very lively, so I appreciate that. It's good to connect with you. As Wendy had said, I'm a high school English teacher in Victoria, BC, Canada. So Victoria is just outside of Vancouver, really close to Seattle. And I thought I'd share with you a little bit about with regards to my teaching journey, because I think it reflects why I've made the changes I've made to my classroom and why I've adopted inquiry as my own. So I started my teaching in 2002 at a high school here in Victoria called Esquimalt High School. A great high school, great staff, amazing student body. And I'm at a different school now. I'm at Oak Bay High School now. Esquimalt High School has a very diverse student body. And in my first 7 years there, I worked with our most at-risk youth. A lot of students who either had attendance issues or health issues, or there was a story behind the student that was leading to some kind of struggle in school. And those first 7 years, really our team of teachers that worked with those students came together, and they taught me that the story behind the student is very, very important. And of all the data we collect day in and day out on our students, whether it's assessment scores or attendance data or anecdotal feedback, I think that those first 7 years taught me that I really need to get to know the stories of the students before me. And after about 7 years of working with those at-risk students and those alternative classroom settings, I transitioned into what you would call the regular stream, teaching more of our traditional English classes. And I still was asking some of the big questions I had been asking my entire career, which were, you know, am I meeting the needs of all of the students in my room? And am I personalizing this so it's engaging and relevant and meaningful to everyone in my room? And eventually, and if you've read the book, you've heard this story, and it's a bit of a tearjerker. Eventually, I worked with a student named Garrison. And Garrison was a senior student in my English class. And like the students I taught in my first 7 years of school, Garrison had a lot of obstacles facing him and in the way of succeeding in school. And Garrison ended up disappearing from my class for what seemed to be like a long, long time. And one day I was driving to get a coffee at lunch, and I saw Garrison skateboarding on the side of the road. And I asked him if he would jump in my car and go for a coffee with me. And that coffee was absolutely meant to be with Garrison, because I could pinpoint all the changes I've made to my teaching today due to the conversation I had with Garrison that day. And over coffee, one simple question led to me adopting inquiry as my own. And that question was, Garrison, you know, what do you truly love to do? What are you truly passionate about? Because everything we had been doing in school that year with Garrison was not resonating with him. And reflecting on my time with Garrison, I think that the fact that it wasn't resonating with him, it wasn't keeping him in the classroom. And to my surprise, Garrison said that he loved graffiti art and that he was actually quite a talented and passionate graffiti artist. And I didn't believe him. So we jumped in the car and we went for another drive down the road. And sure enough, Garrison showed me some of his work on the side of a factory, a warehouse in Esquimalt. And my jaw dropped. It was absolutely breathtaking. The scale and the attention to detail and the artistic detail, I was just floored. And so, of course, what do? We take out our iPhones and we're taking photos, and I'm just blown away. And Garrison's kind of looking at me like I'm crazy. But essentially, what I was trying to capture was how much effort and beauty Garrison had shown us, and the public for that matter, through his graffiti art. And so I asked Garrison if he'd be willing to share some of his art with our class and share some of his passion for graffiti art with others. And essentially what unraveled before us over the next few months in school was an inquiry project. He did research essays about what motivated and inspired his work. He did presentations in class where he used the photos that we had captured that day when we first went for that drive to talk about his learning. And then he did personal narrative essays talking about why graffiti art spoke to him and what he wanted to do in his future. And by the end of that year, Garrison had graduated, and I don't think it was due to the highly personalized approach that we displayed or that we saw in our time together, but I do think that was a big piece of it. And although I celebrated Garrison's success, I kind of felt like other students deserve just as a personalized approach as Garrison had received. I think, I had 30 students in that class, and for one student, it was highly, highly meaningful and personalized, and for 29 others, it was just the traditional English setting. And so that summer, I completely transformed the way that I did things, and I think that summer was the summer that has led me 7 years later now to the teacher that I am today. And it's an inspiring story, but it's one in which I think all of our students deserve. So that's kind of who I am in a nutshell, and why inquiry has, or how inquiry has shaped who I am today, Wendy.
Oh, that's so great, Trevor. And I just asked actually the chat, and I'll throw it up here really quick. I asked everyone, does anybody else have their Garrison that impacted them as well? And it's great to see the introductions come in. I'm showing the chat on my screen right now, but thanks so much everyone for introducing yourself. We have folks with large districts and small districts, but thanks everyone for introducing yourselves, and lots of coordinators, tech teachers, tech directors. So everyone wears a lot of different hats for sure. And it looks like the background with inquiry is promoting it, like Memory says, with the teachers and always looking for other ideas. We also had somebody wanting to share it, integrate with the curriculum, and in particular with mathematics, or helping people discover what makes them tick for sure. So really good responses coming in here. And I love that Steve just mentioned, I think I have a student almost every year like Garrison who helps me shift. And I think that's a really good point, that you'll continue to every year have someone who challenges your thinking and challenges yourself as a teacher, for sure, Trevor.
Absolutely. I'm loving the chat. I see some familiar faces, and like I said earlier, some new faces. And I do think Garrison is like many students that we work with, and I don't think I'm unique or special in my experience with Garrison. I think it's a story that many teachers identify with, and I think what I propose in adopting inquiry resonates with teachers because they see Garrison in their own classrooms. Absolutely.
Awesome. And it seems here, like looking at Deb, is levels of inquiry, and I think you'll talk a little bit about that when we think of approach, but thinking about unpacking your curriculum and what level, especially if these are technology directors or coaches. Many people in the community are tasked with sharing this with a broader level of teachers. When you think of Garrison, Trevor, and all of the Garrisons that everyone's sharing right now in the chat, is there any tips or things that you about disseminating to a larger group, particularly you being a learning coach in Greater Victoria? Any thoughts to that, since folks are sharing about that?
Yeah, Wendy, why don't we pull up the swimming pool graphic if you don't mind, and I can speak to that and how that shapes and directs our practice. Do you mind?
Sure thing. Yeah, let's switch from chat over to that. Great. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you. There it is. Beautiful. So I collaborated with a colleague here in our district named Rebecca Bathurst Hunt. You can see her Twitter handle up there in the top corner of that graphic. Follow her. She's an amazing kindergarten teacher who has adopted inquiry, and she's doing some really inspiring and powerful things in her practice. Love her to bits. And I had a vision for what I had adopted as my own in my classroom, and she was able to bring my vision to life through this graphic. So big thanks to Rebecca for the collaboration on the graphics in the book. They've been really well received. In working with colleagues here and across the globe for that matter, I think the trouble teachers have in adopting inquiries, we give too much freedom over learning too soon, and that would be the deep end of the swimming pool, the free inquiry side of the swimming pool. I think we thrust our learners and perhaps even ourselves into that space because it's so exciting and inspiring. And free inquiry is when students are asking their own essential questions and selecting their own resources to deepen their understanding of their essential question. And it's when they choose their own prescribed outcome, their own performance task. And I think that's where I went after Garrison. Garrison was free inquiry in its purest. And I went there right away the next year with most of my classes. And the consequences were it was too much freedom for my students too soon without the proper adoption of skills and deepening of understanding of what voice and choice and inquiry looks like. So I went back to the other side of the swimming pool, all the way to structured. And through my research during my MA, I've discovered this scaffolding, which I think is just so powerful. And so essentially, if we look at the structured, controlled, guided, and free as types of inquiry, I divide my year of coursework up into those 4 units of study. So in a 10-month course, we spend about 2 to 2.5 months in each type. And what I have found is that by the time we get to free, as we've traveled through those other 3 types of the swimming pool, students have a more powerful skill set, and they're much more cognitive of what works for them and what doesn't work for them, which also helps them be successful in free inquiry. So I'll kind of go all the way to the structured side and kind of elaborate on what structured means in my classroom. That's where I've designed and asked an essential question. That's where I have brought in a resource for us all to read, or several resources for that matter, because I have identified them as being powerful to help us deepen our understanding of that driving question. And that's where I have selected a performance task that all of my students are going to complete. A big risk of adopting free inquiry as your own is that we lose sight of the learning objectives and standards that we all have for ourselves, whether or not they're provincial or state relegated, or if they're designated, or if they're self-imposed. We all have standards for ourselves. And if we go to free inquiry, we can't necessarily ensure 100% of the time that students are going to adopt those objectives as their own. So I front load many of those objectives, specifically with content and performance tasks throughout the structured and controlled and even into guided. So by the time we get to free, I've ensured that they have met the standards of the course. So an example I could give for structured is, one question I'm asking all of my English students this year is, how are stories told and why are stories powerful? And that speaks to the different genres in English that we read and the different themes in literature that we read of. And in that driving question, I bring in poetry and short stories and novels and various forms of art and music. And all of those resources I've selected because they address that driving question. And then I choose a performance task that we all do. So typically in the senior level English class, a literary analysis essay is a must. We must do that. A learning objectives is the literary analysis essay. And so we do that in the structured type so that I ensure it's done, because not all students will choose that for themselves in free. I'm a big fan of Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe and their work with Understanding by Design. And I adopt that as my lesson in unit design. And I reflect on that with my learners throughout the structured and controlled and guided, so that when they design their own unit of study, it is one that follows the tenets of understanding by design. And I think that framework leads to success in other avenues of life, whether it's the arts or athletic pursuits or even post-secondary. If my students can understand UBD, then that's a framework that they could use in other areas of their life. I love this image. You can see it behind me here. When we zoom out of the graphic and you can see my classroom, it's in my class, it's in my students' binders, and we're constantly referring to it. We're talking about where we are in the types, how we feel about where we are in the pool, how we feel about moving to the deeper sections of the pool. And all of those reflections, whether it be oral or written, are rich assessments for me to use throughout the course as well. And I think that this graphic is powerful in all disciplines. It's just not the English classroom. I take this to a whole bunch of summits all over North America. It's been adopted globally, and it can be used in the science classroom, in the math classroom, in the primary or kindergarten classroom, all the way up to post-secondary. So it's a powerful one, and I think it really reflects the scaffolding I propose in the book. Yeah. I'm just looking at the chat now that I've talked so long about the graphic. Fantastic stuff here.
For sure, Trevor. I mean, I think it's really great is one, I think it's so accessible to whatever curriculum framework you might be using. So it's great to see folks in the community share, whether they're using UDL or whatever they might be using. This is super malleable to that, and I think it makes it a universal language for sure. And it's been great to see people share where they're currently at in that pool. So it's great to see. Let's see, in the chat, we've got Allison sharing using structured inquiry with early elementary and lots of guided inquiry at the 7 to 12 levels. So where you're at in the pool might be dictated about, which school you're in or which group of teachers you're working with. Do you agree, Trevor? Is that, it sounds like in your class, it can be really, flexible and you move throughout the stages, personalized, just like we're talking about. Anything to share in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just had to go to another plugin so I can get battery life here. There we are, I'm back. Absolutely. I think in my classroom, I scaffold it from shallow to deep, and I'm constantly reflecting on where my learners are at and how they are adopting the types for their own. And I really do try to transition from type to type as a group, just to unify support for one another and to unify the different types so everyone is in the pool at the same time together. But definitely, my advice to elementary school teachers, specifically K to grade 4 or 5, I think the various types could be done precisely during the same week of learning, for example. So an example I could give is, a teacher could be doing a science unit in a structured inquiry framework where the teacher is asking the driving question and has given the class a resource. But there could be a STEM station in the class, or there could be a makerspace station in the class, which is completely free inquiry, where although learning throughout the day is spent in the science portion in structured, there is that makerspace or STEM space where the student has more voice and choice over what it is that they're doing. In my experience, I think the curiosity jar is a fantastic tool in the elementary school classroom. The curiosity jar is literally a big glass jar that's on the teacher's desk, and at any point in the school week, students can come up and pop a question in the jar. And the obligation, the responsibility of the teacher is to take those questions day to day and use them to guide learning, not just to answer them, but to use them to locate a resource and share a resource to deepen our understanding of the driving question. And what that models for students is just not research pathways, but it also models for students that their voice and their curiosity is something that's honored in our classrooms and in our educational system. And so the curiosity jar is one that I've seen have tremendous success in the K to 4 or 5 classroom. I think this scaffolding is very, very important for the high school setting. I think students, in my experience, by the time they get to me, have become less curious and less passionate about their learning. And this scaffolding allows me to kind of rekindle that passion and that curiosity without throwing them into the deep end and having them, have there be any consequences or drastic consequences. I think that curiosity and that passion for learning from K to 4, it's pretty natural for our students at that age to enter learning with that fire. So although I think the scaffolding is awfully powerful, I don't think it's necessary for the K-4 classroom as much as it is for the 9 through 12 classroom or even the middle school classroom.
Awesome. Thanks, Trevor. It looks like Deb's sharing the Wonderwall and other great examples as well. And also, it's so great to just see from the community how liberating this graphic can be too. It can be really scary, I think, to enter into that. And I think a lot of educators think they have to jump right there. And so it's so great to hear stories from the chat right now of people sharing this and allowing structure to happen first before going in there. So really great inspiration coming from folks. And some of you might stay, it looks like Amy's sharing a project-based classroom where you may always be running in a constant state of guided inquiry or somewhere in between. So awesome, great things from the chat, guys. I'm going to throw up another prompt. I threw up a couple other ones to share your curriculum. So it's great to see Allison sharing the ISTE standards as well, your state standards. So how that can color the way that you use inquiry for sure. So do share that. Oh, I love it, Steve. Don't get lost in your content. And so things like the Curiosity Jar and Wonderwall can certainly allow that to ground you in what really matters and why we're all here today and spending our evenings and afternoons and mornings doing this. Cool. So let me put up another prompt for the community. So how do you introduce it to your class? So let's move from, it sounded like we were talking about the different stages we're in inquiry, wherever you're at, even if you haven't started it yet, and this is your first exposure to maybe doing something like this with your students. But do share now any favorite techniques, lessons, strategies. We already shared a couple, like Wonderwall from Deb, but do share now. We'd love to hear in the chat what those techniques or lessons, and if you have any, like Steve was mentioning HyperDocs, if you have any links to resources, I will be saving this chat and sharing it out because there's so many juicy goodies coming out of this right now. So do share those links as well. Trevor, while those are rolling in, do we have any other particular techniques? I know you shared a couple of ideas within the pool. Do you have any others that we can share as examples are coming in from the chat?
Absolutely. Throughout the whole year, I prepare my students for free inquiry by asking them to consider their passions and their curiosities and their interests. Do you have the 4 pillars graphic that you can pull up, Wendy, for me? I love this graphic. Again, it's another one that Rebecca Bathurst Hunt had done for me. There it is there. The 4 pillars essentially are 4 different foundations for inquiry. And I think, a fault of the inquiry teacher is to just rely on student passions alone. I think passion projects are great, but I've taught so many students that say that they have no passions or they're passionate about nothing. And I can't blame teenagers or young students who say that, because I think passions require us to stick with things long term, to grapple with them, to unpack them and tease away layers of meaning before we truly call them a passion, before we truly say that we are absolutely in love with them. And so I do believe passions are one pillar of inquiry, but I think there are 3 others that I use in my practice that I've seen lead to really powerful learning and really powerful inquiry. So the second pillar is aim for a goal. We all have students before us who are extremely goal focused, and they have something in mind that they want to achieve, or they have something in mind they want to perfect, or even they have a future in mind that they want to have for themselves one day. And so through an interview process or through prompts, writing prompts throughout the year, discussion prompts, I get them to start thinking about their goals and what their future for themselves is. And that's led to really rich, powerful inquiry. Examples I can give you, especially from the senior level class, are students who have some kind of post-secondary aspiration or a program or a career focus in mind, and they turn that focus and that goal into their inquiry project. I've had students who want to be nurses, for example. I can think of one particular student who knew she wanted to be a nurse. Her grandmother was a nurse, her mother was a nurse, and she knew one day she was going to be a nurse. And so she completed reading an autobiography of a nurse. She interviewed her family members who were in the field. She did a job shadow of a facility. And then she completed her application to the school that she wanted to receive her nursing certification from. And so by understanding that goal and helping her form an inquiry unit, not only was it highly meaningful and relevant learning, but it led to her going to school and eventually becoming a registered nurse, to which she's working as today. So I've seen really powerful inquiry lead to not just success, but a successful future, a meaningful future for learners. The third pillar is delve into your curiosities. I think curiosities are the seeds of passions. I think they're little questions or maybe uncertainties that we have. We've never had the space to explore something or grapple with something. And by allowing students to have space and support to explore that, perhaps it's going to turn into a passion. So curiosities I've seen, I love with my students having a curiosity journal where they could ask questions and then we could explore those questions in our learning, in our classroom. So really similar to the curiosity jar, but a little bit more private, where they can ask those of themselves and communicate that to me in a curiosity journal. And then the fourth pillar is take on a new challenge. And taking on a new challenge is exactly what it states it is. It's doing something you've never done before and trying to master that or overcome that obstacle. So it could be learning a new language, or picking up a musical instrument that you've never taken on before, or taking on a new sport or a new hobby, something that you once perceived to be undoable, and now you have the time and the space and the support to not just explore it, but to conquer it. Going back to passions, I love giving my students passion prompts in class as discussion prompts or presentation prompts. At the opening of this session, I talked about how so often the data we take on our students is academic data or assessment data. And I think that these prompts reflect the type of data we need to ask of our students more often. Things like, what do you truly love to do? The question I asked Garrison. Or if you had, 5 hours of free time, what would you be doing with that free time? Or what motivates you to stick with something? What do you truly, do long term? What is something that you've stuck with? And I think through those prompts, not only do I get to know them better, but I think that those prompts lead to powerful inquiry later. So those four pillars lead to the free inquiry side of the pool. And these are pieces of the puzzle that I ask of my students throughout the whole year.
That's awesome, Trevor. Let's check in on the chat because there's lots of great examples coming in. Looks like M has shared TED Ed clubs as ways to go to use the pillars to stand up your inquiry in your classroom. Some great blogs for sure. Steve shared some good websites to maybe start that exploration of a passion. But I'd love to hear in the chat. Go ahead and throw maybe some ways you move to the next pillar, right? I think you're so right, Trevor, in that we often can just get stuck there and starting with that, and it may leave some students unable to articulate that for sure. So do share, everyone in the chat, maybe any examples of perhaps going to the second, third, or fourth pillar as you start to move throughout the pool for sure.
One thing I also love doing, Wendy, and this is more of a prompt for the group to share resources, is I love to show my students passion or a curiosity in action. And I do that in the form of, those really powerful, inspiring YouTube videos. One that I reference in my book that is really popular is Kane's Arcade. And if you haven't watched Kane's Arcade, you can search out on YouTube and watch it. It's about a 10-minute clip of a young student from LA who spends his summer creating a cardboard arcade. And why does he create this cardboard arcade? It's because he loves arcades, and that passion leads to really amazing experiences for him, highly memorable learning and meaningful learning for him. And so what I do with that video is I will show it to my students. We'll pick it apart through a series of prompts so they could see passion in action and what passion in learning could lead to. So maybe that's a bit of a prompt for the chat is, do you have any videos that you use in your practice to inspire or motivate or to create change or impact with your learners? Because I'm always looking for those videos to share with my learners. So if you have any, please throw them up.
So great, Trevor. Yeah, let's see what folks have shared and gathering those. I've seen a lot of great educators share them on playlists and just have those, wonder walls, have a digital wonder wall that you have at the ready. So please feel free to share some great ones like Kane's Arcade. Steve shared video as well as a way to get there. Cool. Rubik's Cube, a question waiting to be answered. Thanks, Steve. We did have a question while other links come in or other share. If you're using the YouTube chat, it can be a little wonky. I'm able to paste, but you can also certainly type it out as I think Deb did earlier as well. But we did have a question. How do you ensure, Trevor, that you cultivate inquiry without diluting standards? No textbook. So maybe as we're thinking about these 4 pillars, and maybe some of these tech coaches or folks who are inspiring classroom educators, how could you be like M is asking and share these pillars or share the pool of inquiry, but help answer those questions that people have about including things that they have to, content that they may need to share?
Yeah, I could kind of tackle that right now, Wendy, if you don't mind. That's a great question. I was noticing it myself. And in fact, I'm just going to throw up a blog post for people to check out. I'm just having trouble getting it in there with the URL. So we'll see if I can figure it out here. Boom, boom. No, it's not letting me throw the URL in there. So anyhow, my blog is trevmackenzie.wordpress.com. And I wrote about this piece probably in November, and it's called Setting the Bar. And what I ask of my students when it comes time to not diluting or watering down the standards of our coursework is I really want us to focus on mastery learning. And although I love co-designing rubrics and learning with my students, I really want them to focus on what professional and expertise and slick work looks like. And through my collaboration with students, I really try to put them in touch with experts in the field of their inquiry, whether it's a photographer or a dancer or a musician. Thanks for pulling that up, Wendy. It's the first post there if you'd like to scroll down. I have them interview those experts, and I have them share through a series of questions with those experts what they're learning about, and then what does fantastic work in that field look like. And through that interview, through those questions, they identify essentially what mastery learning is and what they strive for in their inquiry topic or inquiry unit. And it's led to really powerful self-assessment when students have set the bar for themselves in communication with a professional in their field of interest or field of inquiry. That self-assessment I've seen take their learning to another level. So that's been really, really neat, really powerful, and that's something that I've been tinkering with. Maybe 5 years ago, I would help my students more with regards to building of rubrics to self-assess. And in about the last year and a half, I've been focusing more on this idea of the bar and mastery learning. And I have Jeff Heil to thank for that. Jeff's a colleague with the team, with the Summit team out of San Diego, and he's really giving me some thought-provoking stuff to consider with regards to what he does with badges with his learners. And so definitely an ongoing kind of evolution in assessment, but that's one piece of the puzzle that I try to uphold so those standards aren't watered down for my students.
Awesome, Trevor. Great. And I think a couple other folks were talking about experts and accessing them on Twitter, and that being a big piece of the puzzle as well with inquiry and but also assessment. So really great. Cool. And let's see, really great videos coming in. Thanks everyone for continuing to share. And also you can share in the chat now as well any other examples you might have, as Trevor has mentioned, to building rubrics or self-assessment and how that may guide you along in this process as well. Cool. Let's go on to another question, and then we'll, after we wrap that up, we'll open the floodgates and see if we have all questions and have you come join us here in the Hangout. Thank you. If you're just joining in, folks, we're live with Trevor Mackenzie, author of Dive into Inquiry. So so great to have you here on the YouTube chat. If you're just popping in, don't be shy. Please drop in your Twitter handle, drop in what you do and any questions you might have for Trevor. We've just gone through a couple of the great graphics from Dive into Inquiry. And it looks like Holly shared an awesome 48-hour code if you haven't gotten your copy yet, which is just live on if you go to Amazon to purchase that. Great. So here we have another question that I think everyone can answer, Trevor. I'll pull up. But what are the greatest benefits you have witnessed for your learners from inquiry? So we've shared some strategies. We've looked at a couple of the scaffolding graphics that are helping you actually do this in your classroom. But why are we doing it? What are some things you've seen so far that make you want to keep doing it, make you want to share with the rest of your school? Let's have that go on in the background in the chat. And Trevor, do you want to share a little bit about the benefits that you've seen as you continue to scale this out?
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we, could you throw up the sketch note with Sylvia Duckworth? That's a fantastic one. That's, yeah, that one there. You know, Sylvia, a fantastic colleague out of Toronto and super talented sketch note artist. You know, we collaborated on this sketch note together and she had asked me, you know, could we do a top 10 reasons to use inquiry in your practice? And we shared a Google Doc together and I said, only 10? You know, I think I threw 40 up there. And, you know, together we had to take it down to 10. And I often open up sessions at summits with this slide asking colleagues, you know, in your current practice, how many of these top 10 reasons or benefits to inquiry do you currently see without changing any of your practice? If I were to walk into your classroom, what would I witness? And I asked them to think about these 10 reasons to adopt inquiry. And you know, undeniably, every time I show that slide, teachers are able to identify several, if not most, of that list. And it seems to me that the biggest shift teachers need to make in adopting inquiry is to begin learning with a question. I think we give voice and choice, and I think we try to make learning relevant and honor passions and interests and talents. I think we try to foster curiosity and teach grit and growth mindset. But I think if we start learning with a question, whether or not that's in a structured inquiry side of the pool or in free inquiry, I think that leads to really powerful inquiry. And so that's my challenge for not just the chat room, but for all teachers interested in adopting inquiry, is to begin learning with a question rather than a resource. Rather than beginning with a chapter in the textbook or a novel or an image, start with a question and have your students access prior knowledge and share their own understanding of the question at first. And then that leads to why we're choosing specific resources and what we are learning of that driving question, and then how to demonstrate our learning. So yeah, love this graphic. Big shout out to Sylvia Duckworth. Lots of shout outs tonight to my PLN. You know, the book is really the culmination of many collaborations with really awesome educators. And so Rebecca Bathurst Hunt, who did the sketch notes for the book, and then of course Sylvia Duckworth, big shout out to both of them. So yeah.
Awesome. Trevor, I'm going to go ahead and share on the chat right now a few of the benefits that are coming in. I've got Gwen has shared, Anne has shared easy to differentiate. And as we've seen with some awesome tools coming out like Google Classroom and some of the technologies that are making inquiry even easier like YouTube. But great point, differentiating. And do you have any other examples, Trevor, of how this has helped facilitate differentiation for you so you're able to reach all the garrisons?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think a big challenge I faced early in adopting inquiry in my career was, you know, I really did have 30 different students in free inquiry working on 30 different questions and at 30 different paces. And at first that really freaked me out. At first that was a huge challenge. But what that enabled me to do was sit down next to certain students who needed me more than others. And in that moment, that's where true personalization comes into play, because then you could really differentiate to the individual rather than to subgroups or to, you know, cohorts within your classroom. When you sit next to a student and it's one-on-one, that's where true and powerful differentiation comes into play. And I truly believe the more voice and choice we give our students, the more structures we have to put into place to help them be successful. And so through those structures, that allows me time and space and energy to sit with students while others are working on their inquiry units. So maybe we can pull up the free inquiry proposal briefly, Wendy, because I know we need to get to opening up the chat room and opening up the channel to the group. I just want to comment on this briefly. This is my free inquiry proposal, and this is a 6-step process that students essentially plan and then propose. They pitch it to me in a one-on-one meeting of about 10 minutes. And through this plan, I'm able to ensure a couple things. First of all, that their scope of their inquiry unit is manageable and one that's going to be successful. I'm able to ensure that it meets the standards of our course and the learning objectives that we have for ourselves. And I'm also able to ensure that it is highly meaningful work and that it's going to be displayed to a public audience. I think those are all pieces of the puzzle that inquiry really lends well to. So, have a look at those 6 steps. And I do write about those 6 steps at length in the book. There are about 4 chapters that focus on the free inquiry side of the swimming pool. Because again, I think it's really important that when we provide students with that much voice and choice, we are also giving them the structures to help them be successful.
Awesome, Trevor. A few other benefits that came in the chat of note were Joseph said pride from students, helping them come up with new ideas and directions. So I think when you get further down the pool, your own curriculum and your own teaching evolves. So great point, Joe. Rochelle shared something similar, this thrill, this pride, this really same verbs, and adjectives coming in around excitement, right, for students, which is huge. So helping learners be in control, Rochelle said as well. So letting up our control so that, and I think you mentioned it too, Trevor, that this is so much more than curriculum. It's a life curriculum too, right? Is helping students with inquiry prepares them way beyond your class as well. So awesome example, Rochelle, for sure. And I love it. They learned so much more from them. Really good example.
Yeah, I think the agency we give over learning through inquiry leads to, not just successful future learners, lifelong learners, but also just this is what we want our citizens in our society to be. We want them to be awesome planners and critical thinkers and, people who demonstrate grit and perseverance and have a growth mindset. And I think, inquiry in my experience leads learners to that place, which is, the most powerful thing I've seen in my practice. Yeah.
Awesome, Trevor. Well, great. Let's keep the chat going, but do we want, and some really great tips and technology that can help facilitate. Em brings up a good point that you certainly don't need technology for a lot of these strategies, but there's certainly some really cool tips like Philip shared that can help facilitate inquiry as well. So great examples all across the spectrum from 1.0 to and beyond. For sure. Cool. And I think Holly put in not Amazon, but the edtechteam.press. So to get your 20% off for the next 48 hours. Okay, Trevor, should we do it? Should we let folks come on in? We'll see.
Let's do it.
Cool, guys. So if you haven't played community YouTube Live Roulette with us, we're going to give it a go. Trevor, before I do that, can they get an access to this slide deck later? So if they want to dive into the pool or
Absolutely. I'm wondering how we can share that. I can share that later. I could tweet it out. I'll definitely tweet out the link so you guys can access that. And all those images there you can find through the photo stream on my Twitter account. So I'm at Trev_Mackenzie, and you can find that all there. But I will definitely tweet that out later on tonight or after this session.
Perfect. Cool. So what I'm going to do, everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to throw in the direct Hangout link into the chat. It's almost like it's a little bit scary, but you know what? We're going into free inquiry right now. So I'm going to drop the link in. If you have a question for Trevor or you want to share something, an example or expand upon something we talked about in chat from our questions, come on in, and all we ask is just keep the mute on. We're going to go into a Hangout. And you may have your YouTube page up. You may want to mute that if you do come into the Hangout, because we'll get some feedback. So just a few housekeeping before we let the link out. And then what we'll do is I'll go ahead and unmute folks to come and say hi and ask a question of Trevor. So here we go, Trevor. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this, Wendy.
Let's see. Okay. So there's a link now in YouTube. So go ahead and press it, folks. We'll go ahead and give out the copy of Dive into Inquiry as well here in a moment from folks in the chat and or in the Hangout.
Wendy, I don't click that link myself, do I?
What's that?
I don't click that link myself, right?
No, you're already in it. Then we'll have an inception problem. Yay, look at Lori came in. Hey, Lori. Hey, come on in. All right, let's see who the brave ones are. Come on in. Dive into Inquiry right now live with Trevor.
Love it.
Lori, as people pour in, did you have a question for Trevor or an example you want to share? You're welcome to lurk, folks, as well. If you want to just come in and wave and say hi, you don't have to talk on the mic if you don't want to. But yay, look at there's Dan. Dan's chilling in there. We're coming live from the living room. Colleen, welcome. Deanne. That's okay. There we go. I think I've got. If I muted you, it's okay. I'll unmute you if you have something to say. But awesome. Welcome, George. Cool, guys. So we'll let people continue to come in. Just click on that link in the YouTube Live if you'd like. But let's hear from, if you came in, yay, welcome, Joe. If you came into the live chat with us, go ahead and do you have a question for Trevor or something you'd like to share? Welcome, Jennifer.
All we ask is just keep the mute on.
If you came into the live chat with us, there we go. It's okay. I'm muting everyone as they come in. Hey, memories. All right. So let's see. Yeah, go ahead and unmute if you have. But before you unmute, if you can, you heard the echo. That just means that your YouTube is also playing. So just mute the YouTube so we don't hear my awesome voice. And then go ahead and let's chat. Anybody have any questions for Trevor? Just you can either just wave on the camera, or I think you should be able to unmute it yourself.
All right.
Hey, Joe. Yay. Hey, how's it going?
All right, I'm just going to go for it. But my question, students right now in the earth science class really digging into that inquiry-based approach. But I'm having trouble as far as, you touched upon the structure that the students need. And with EPs, behavior issues to really make them successful and without hand-holding.
Great. Did you catch that, Trevor?
I didn't catch it all. Sorry, Joe. Wendy, did you catch it all? Maybe you could reiterate for me?
I think there was just a little tiny lag, but I think, Joe, did I get it right that how do we take students through this process without too much hand-holding? Is that right? Did I capture that? You can clarify if you want.
What'd you get?
Oh, I think I have you again now. Did you want to ask it one more time?
Sorry, I started like 10 students really full on with inquiry-based approach. They've been doing some amazing things. But then I have another 10 students on the other end of the spectrum who have, lower processing behavior needs. Trevor touched that's needed to guide those students. I'm just wondering kind of how I can set them up without hand-holding.
Yeah.
Gotcha. There it is. Did you catch that, Trevor?
Bingo. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. That helped that second time. I think, hand-holding is okay for our students who really need it. And I get, free inquiry is really appealing, and we all want our students in the free inquiry side of the pool at the same time. But really the beautiful thing, and I think the most powerful thing about inquiry, is that it doesn't have to be all students at the same place at the same time. On the contrary, it's we are meeting the needs better and more powerfully than we ever have been in this inquiry model. So although it may feel like hand-holding, I do feel like it's meeting the needs of each individual student. But I do, I get where you're coming from. We want to see our students taking risks, and we want to push them towards the deeper end of the pool. And I think what's really key is that we are asking them to reflect on that process and where they are in the pool, and gently encouraging them to take the next step to wherever they need to be in their inquiry. So yeah, you know, the 6 steps in the plan and pitch process is very powerful with regards to reflecting on learning and planning learning. And so I think that could be a checklist for your vulnerable students or your students who may not be at the same place at the same time as your other learners. So have a look at that, because it definitely calls on students to reflect on their goals and to identify resources. And that essentially is a structure that any student can adopt, whether they're super competent in their inquiry or they are struggling and feeling, you know, like they need some support. That proposal is something you could definitely lean on. Thanks for the question.
So great. Thanks, Trevor. And does anyone else have anything to add to those strategies for the 10 #10 students that might be struggling? Dan shared in the chat that you know, you're going to need to do that with some students, particularly if you know, if you're in a school where you might not be with your tribe and you're kind of the first one trying this out, your students may not be used to this for sure. So any other strategies from folks here on the Hangout that you want to share about working with those students, and or if you have another question, go ahead and unmute your mic and jump in. I hear someone.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yay, Colleen. Yeah. Claps for Colleen for bravely unmuting.
Hi, Trevor. Hi, everyone. I found that I was surprised at how much I was grateful for structure with offering free inquiry. I think I wasn't used to it and I didn't anticipate it. And in a way, I had assumed, and we all know what that does, I had assumed that because I wanted to be so open-ended, that my structure should also be fairly open-ended. And this is the first time that I've had both of my feet on solid ground. And even my principal sat down and helped me with my structure for this inquiry unit. And I have never been so grateful for structure in my life, because now we have so much more freedom within that so-called limited structure. And I'm baffled, but I'm so pleasantly surprised. So that's why I'm happy tonight, because I get to share that good news. And I've been trying to share some stories with Trevor on Twitter, which has been awesome because he's been able to give my students feedback, which is so great for them. But yeah, very, very happy with what's happening so far.
Thanks, Colleen. I appreciate it. Can I share a little bit about what happened today? Are you okay with that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So Colleen has been using the book in her practice, and of course has been sharing her reflections via her blog and the book's hashtag Dive into Inquiry. And the last couple of days she's been tweeting out, well, she has been the whole time, but tweeting out student work and students learning in action. And today I woke up to a tweet from 2 of her students who were doing some stop motion tinkering on her whiteboard. And she had one student who was the producer. He was behind the iPad. It was on a tripod. And then she had another student, an artist named Eric, who was doing the drawings himself. And within maybe a half an hour, she had tweeted out a YouTube link to a stop motion that they created. And I was so excited to see not just the evidence of learning that was kind of, you know, sprung from some of the stuff that I propose in the book, but to see their learning shared to a public, authentic audience. so of course I retweeted, I liked it, I commented right away. And then what was awesome and powerful was the student and I started to talk back and forth about the quality of work and sharing of resources and where the student was going to go next in their learning. And sure enough, within another half an hour, the student had produced another stop motion film with his buddy, the director, the producer, and there was another one tweeted out. And you know, I'm a big fan of the sharing of learning to a public audience. I think, you know, as learners share their learning, I think they turn into teachers because we all learn from them because it's shared to a public audience. And so when I saw Eric's work out there, I had to comment on it. And if any of you are doing inquiry or using the book in your practice, you know, please do share your students' work, your students' learning with your PLN, because I think there are going to be doors open that we never would have anticipated, and it's going to be highly relevant and meaningful to the learner to see where their learning could lead to. And so, Colleen, I thank you so much for sharing Eric's work, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with next because it's just such really cool stuff. So kudos to you for sharing. Thanks on that.
So awesome, and I love that Colleen's in this chat. Oh, hey, George. I saw George getting hassled by somebody. You're in the office too. Where are you calling from, George?
There, I'm just, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, yeah, I'm just calling down the road. I'm at St. Michael's on Richmond.
Oh, hey, George, look at this. No wonder your
funny.
connection's so clear. We're like 5 blocks away from each other.
Yeah, totally. My question for you is, you're working at a high school, and so at what time in your school year do you introduce inquiry in a very decided way? Like you decide, okay, this is the unit. When do you start that?
Day one, George. You know, free inquiry or inquiry for that matter, is it a single off or a unit of study? I really love Genius Hour. I love passion projects, but you know, a big powerful shift I made in my practice a few years back was inquiry 100% of the time. And so, you know, on day one, students come in and for the most part, they're anticipating a certain structure that we'll operate under. And on day one, I really flipped that on its head, you know, by not providing a course syllabus to them. We co-design our learning and we co-write our course syllabus together. And part of why I do that is so that they see they have voice and choice in our time together in an authentic way, a meaningful way. And that begins the transition into an inquiry classroom really, really explicitly. They know right away that we'll be having their voice lead our learning quite often.
Now
So
you're teaching humanities, right? English?
I'm teaching English, yeah.
Okay, so you've got quite a bit more open curriculum. I'm science and computers, so for me, I've got a language to teach. So fitting inquiry in where I've got to get them to the point where they're fluent in the language, then they can be creative. So I find for me, I can't start inquiry until later, until I've given them that vocabulary to get them grounded. But in your case, so for the start of grade 12, for instance, or grade 11 course, you can launch right away. If you're comfortable, they have the background to deal with that.
Yeah, well, you know, and there is a language in all disciplines. You know, there's a specific English language that I need my students.
I've lost my connection. Oh dear. Sorry, my line's gone.
Okay.
Thanks, George. We'll continue to answer it though. But same in the chat, guys. We're going a little bit over, so if you need to go, but we'll maybe take one more question after Trevor shares this. But anybody on the YouTube chat, if you want to share, maybe I think we talked earlier with strategies, but I think George has helped kind of flesh it out with language and you know, preparing to go into inquiry. But anything else to share, Trevor, to answer George's question?
You know, sadly he's gone, but I'm sure him and I will connect here in Victoria. You know, essentially what I was going to say was, you know, if we can begin our coursework in structured inquiry and ask a question that the teacher has designed, I think what we'll see is we can still get across the powerful content that those disciplines or those teaching areas need to pass on as deep understanding for our learners. And that is still inquiry. It may not be the free side of the pool or the, you know, highly creative side of the pool, but by modeling questions that lead learning, it is getting us to the free side where our students can show their creativity. So, and in so many ways, not just modeling of an essential question and modeling of powerful resources, but also modeling of, you know, reflecting on the lesson and unit design, the UBD that they'll need to adopt when they get to free inquiry. So, although we have content specific stuff that we need to get through in each of our individual classes, I still think we can start learning at the start of a course in structured. Yeah.
Awesome, Trevor. Well, can't we just hang out with you all night? You don't have to go home or have dinner or anything, right? We can just
I
could just stay there.
I'd love to stay here with you all. This is fantastic. Yeah.
I feel like you're the type of teacher that probably has like a sleeping bag under your desk and like a little cot. But because of our awesome Hangout people who came on video, can you? I think we have Kara, Lori, and Dan didn't get to say hi. Dan, do you want to just say a quick hello and where you're from since you came on video? I feel like I have to honor your bravery.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, yeah, I just saw Trevor was doing this tonight, and I'm like, oh, wait, I've got 5 minutes. I can jump on and watch and hang out and share some things since I'm sharing a bunch of things. I'm in Maine. I'm in rural Western Maine.
Ooh, and we have Alice in Maine too. Do you know Alice, Dan?
I know Alice very well. Alice is about 2 hours south of me.
Awesome. Well, Dan shared some cool a rubric as well. So some really cool stuff. Thanks for coming in, Dan, and nice couch. I like it. Deanne, are you there? Are you lurking? I see a background for Dan. Come on and say hi if you want. Kara, where are you calling from? Oops, you may still be muted. Oh, we'll come back. We'll come back, Kara. Fiddle around. See if we can't. Lori, where are you from? Isn't this nice? Everybody gets a quick mic check. Now you guys can fiddle with it after the hangout. But you have a fantastic ceramic collection behind you. Oh, well, it's okay. Thanks for coming in though. Cool. Well, you guys, I would love to stay here forever with Trevor, but I know he needs dinner. But some great other questions coming. Chantal's mentioned in the chat, language should not be an issue. Kids can communicate their learning in different ways, so that's fantastic. Really great, guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up so we can give away our book. But you know what, Trevor, since our brave Hangout people, we're going to give one away to people in our Hangout and then one away in chat. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
Yay. Okay. I'm going to do the highly scientific, close my eyes and running my finger along the bottom and stopping it. And yay, it's Kara is my random finger. Thanks, Kara. Can you put your email in the chat and then I can, or your Twitter, whatever you feel comfortable with, and we'll get you a copy of Dive Into Inquiry. And now we're going to do the equally scientific way of anyone who chatted in our live chat tonight. Scrolling up and down, and the winner is Deb. Deb wins our book. So from our live chat on YouTube. So Deb, go ahead and throw your Twitter in. I hope you're still there. We'll find you in one way or another. Yay! But don't worry, everybody. Holly Clark, our awesome director of publishing, is there in the chat, and she has shared edtechteam.press. Use the code LIVE right now in the next 48 hours if you want to get a copy. But you know, you can also follow Trevor and learn from him. If you didn't put in your Twitter chat yet, please go ahead and do that so you can build our PLN. These are obviously all people who are interested in inquiry and interested in helping their students find their passions and do great things in the world, which is why we're all here. So add new people to your network tonight. Dive into inquiry. You can keep following the conversation on hashtag EdTechTeam as well. And we have our community.edtechteam.com on Google+, and on Facebook, where you can keep the conversation going. Share these resources, Trevor. I mean, everyone's sharing tonight. I'm going to go ahead and if you signed up with your email onto our calendar invite, I will send you out this chat, but I'll also post it online, just like Trevor said. I love it. Like, we don't need to mail, send you a carrier pigeon to get resources, because if you follow all of us, it will show up on there. So we'll post these resources tonight as well. Trevor, any parting words? Nick Brierley from Australia was on earlier and asked the #1 tip. And I know that that's asking you to prioritize and really go deep into blooms, but what is your final goodbye to everyone, but also your #1 tip?
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for coming, folks. No pun intended, I'm an open book. So I know we didn't get to all of your questions. If you want to reach out to me, Twitter's the easiest way. You can tweet at me or send me a DM. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. But if I had one tip, one tipping point would be for teachers to begin learning with a question. Whether it's your question or student questions, begin learning with a question as opposed to a resource or an outcome. And once you've identified that question, then you can identify what the outcome is that you want with your students. Set that target, but definitely begin learning with a question. That would be the big caveat for me in adopting inquiry as your own. Thanks so much, everyone. This has been so awesome. I can't wait to go through the chat and have a closer look at everyone's comments and questions and resources. It's been a really awesome and fast hour. So wow, what a great night. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Thanks everyone for joining us in the live chat, and thanks everyone for sharing your resources. We'll see you online.